Welcome to Modern Management of the Older Adult, brought to you by the Institute of Clinical Excellence.
Perfect. Good morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Prevett. I am one of our lead faculty and the division lead for our MMOA division, Modern Management of the Older Adult. I had somebody ask me, what does that acronym stand for? And I realized that oftentimes we just say MMOA and we don't say that it's our geriatric older adult division. So hello, everyone. Good morning. And today I want to talk about the emotions of exercising, not the emotions after, the emotions during, and how that is going to influence our older adults, especially those that have a very strong negative reaction to exercising. We all know, and I'm preaching to the converted, right, that when we are exercising, there is, especially when it's of high intensity, which is where a lot of our evidence is, we talk about it a lot in MMOA and as a company within ICE, around intensity and effort being the parameter that matters the most in our therapeutic exercise. And with intensity comes discomfort, right? We have all of these sayings and these mantras to embrace the suck. We love that feeling after you're in the midst of a workout and mentally you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And then you don't die. And afterwards you're feeling really strong and great. And there's this rebound, right? So when we're thinking about particularly high intensity exercise or longer durations, high effort exercise, there's this emotional mapping that happens where we feel pretty good going into it. We get the suck in the middle, and then we get this hyper boost out of it where if you've ever had like that high after exercising, whether it's you lifted something and you feel really strong, if you have the runner's high, which I'm just starting to recognize that feeling of emotional amplitude after an exercise session, it kind of fuels it, right? And you get this high and you chase that and you know how good it feels to exercise. And therefore you kind of embrace the suck or the down negative in order to get that return. And some of this conversation around the emotions during exercise came up because of two parts in our research that I think is super interesting. And then I'm going to kind of link it to our older adults. One is that exercise is becoming the most consistent antidepressant that we can have within our patient population, right? We are starting to see that there is a very, very strong link between those who are physically active. I apologize if you hear the dogs in the background, my kid's just getting home, and an anti-inflammatory. And what we see with mental health disorders is that our pharmaceuticals there's a latency effect to our pharmaceuticals. And with that, it means that we oftentimes have to wait for our medications to take effect, and exercise has this immediate result, right? So because there's an immediate effect to exercise, the question is, why is not everybody doing it? Right. And so this question of there's this immediate return on an investment for exercise. We know that it's super potent, and yet we have all of this data that is showing that individuals are not prescribing to our exercise guidelines. We're becoming increasingly more sedentary. And that becomes even more true as we get older, as chronic disease comes up, and as we start to rate our self-reported health lower. And so one of the things that has come up in the literature is this effective response to exercise, where individuals are thinking that maybe that negative impact or result of exercise is potent enough for some individuals to not want to engage in exercise at all. And if you have worked, and I'm kind of targeting this to our older adults, but by no means is this older adult only, but I have had plenty of clients who have said to me, like, Christina, I hate exercising. I really don't like sweating. Ew. Like, you know, they get this like emotional, visceral reaction to exercising, and it becomes a huge barrier to our interventions, right? So they do not want to engage in high intensity. They don't like sweating. They don't own any workout clothes. They have a perceived belief that they don't have to do any high intensity exercise, or that it's not going to fit the narrative of what their aging experience is like. And it's very multifactorial, but we always try and lean in to what those barriers are. And this was something that I hadn't really leaned into, right? I had thought, a lot of people who have never exercised before, they're going to have that emotional response. And I acknowledged it, and I would intentionally underdose early, but I never really leaned into the effective response of exercise. And so I kind of went down this rabbit hole of these theories and if they can be kind of prognostic about long-term adherence to exercise. And here's kind of what we figured out. When we are seeing individuals who really hate exercise, right? Really hate exercise, we kind of do a lot of things already that is going to try and bridge individuals to exercising with us, right? We do the intentional underdosage. We ask about rating of perceived exertion, all of those types of things going into exercise. But where this can fall short is we want to get up to the right dosage. And where I really started to think about this is on discharge planning. So if I have a person who I can get them to engage in exercise with me, but they still have a very strong, very negative reaction to exercise, can I realistically think that when I discharge that individual, that my client is going to continue doing exercise when I discharge them? And the answer is probably no, right? It's going to probably be no. And this is where, the business models of Stronger Life, the business models of Stave Off have come in, as like, how do we get this discharge planning in place so that I don't have frequent flyers on my program or on my caseload, right? Who I discharge them, they decondition for 3 to 6 months, and then they're back on our caseload. And so how do we approach this? So the first thing we have to do, and the first thing we have to be more cognizant of, is to get an idea of a person's thoughts and feelings about exercise in general before we start engaging in exercise, right? So I want to be more specific, and this is kind of like goals for me, is to be more specific with my questioning for individuals around exercise, right? People are willing to do exercises temporarily in order for them to get the outcome, which is less pain oftentimes in rehab. But I want to know what they feel about exercise. And if they are telling me that they really hate it, or they really don't like feeling uncomfortable in exercise, I need to put that in the back of my head, right? And I'm going to bridge that with the make it meaningful. And it's going to be something that I am going to be aware of as I'm going into exercise. And so in these theories of effective responses of exercise, they kind of take our rating of perceived exertion a little step further, right? When we think about rating of perceived exertion, it's a subjective sign of effort. And so it's going to be partly objective. As we're going into higher heart rate zones, as loads are getting higher, we are going to have an increase in perceived effort. But the secondary piece is the subjective piece, where individuals, if they're tired, they haven't slept well, they're stressed, they're sore, things hurt, chronic diseases is higher, et cetera, they're on medications versus off. Those subjective kind of ancillary things are also going to come into their perceived rating, and it's going to toggle that effort score. And that's why there isn't a perfect correlation between 1 rep maxes or heart rate zones and rating of perceived exertion. Like, we expect that. But adding in this layer of how are you feeling, like emotionally feeling, right? Not how hard do you think this is on a scale of 1 to 10. How emotionally are you feeling in this workout is the additional layer. So if somebody comes up to me and says, Christina, I hate exercise, which is like, I always makes me sad when I have those clients who come in, but of course you're going to have them. Like, I don't like exercise, like, get off that bandwagon, like, don't want to do it. No. Then I'm going to ask, like, kind of what are your feelings around exercise while you're doing it? And then I'm going to acknowledge that when we are doing active interventions, because even if people don't like doing exercise, I'm going to try and get some movement into their sessions, whether they comply with home exercise or not, right? We're going to start going there. And then in their session, I'm going to try and be much more cognizant of their emotional response to exercise. So if they're coming in telling me that they hate exercise, and then I get them doing something really, really difficult that they have a strong negative emotion to, I am not setting them up for success on discharge, right? Because I am just basically like setting up their point, right? Like they really don't feel good about exercise. When they did exercise with this physical therapist, occupational therapist, exercise professional, they hated it. They're not going to keep going when I'm not there. They're going to maybe appease me while they're in session, but they're not going to keep going after. So for that individual, I'm going to try to at least hit neutral on how they're feeling. Like, I'm fine, I'm okay, versus like, I really feel upset or sad or stressed or angry. And there's a scaling for this to positive. And so how can we keep to neutral or positive? One is recognize that getting into high intensity zones for these individuals may not be what's going to set them up for long-term success. Is it going to optimize their outcomes? Of course it is. Are they going to get the results faster? Yes. But if I am not setting them up for success on discharge, they're just going to decondition just as quick, versus if I was able to keep them in a neutral or positive emotional state, then I'm going to be able to maybe have them have more long-term adherence. The second thing is I'm going to think about the environment. We think about the environment from a dosage perspective with intentional underdosage, but like, am I having a setup of the environment that's going to lead to hopefully more positive emotions? Example being like music that they really enjoy is playing in the background. And I ask them specifically, like, what's your favorite song when we're doing something difficult? Have a social environment, maybe depending on where you are exercising or where you are working with clients. When I had Stave Off, if I had a person who was very social, then I would allow them, or I would try and book them, rather not allow, would book them around when we have classes going on. So then it feels like you're exercising with a community. If I have somebody who maybe the emotional drive of exercise is this discrepancy of recognizing how much fitness they have lost because of health consequences, then putting them in front of a bunch of people who are exercising who they are going to perceive as doing better than them is going to slide down that emotional response even further. And so for them, the social piece may not actually be the right driver. And instead, I'm going to allow them to be one-on-one with me in a private space so that that negative emotion of embarrassment isn't what's driving their perceived notions around doing exercise. And then we can start having conversations around those emotional experiences and acknowledge that barrier. Within MMOA, we always talk about we never, ever, ever want to dismiss fear as a barrier to exercise. This is a whole other area that I am honestly just learning about, that I may have dropped a ball in, where I may not have really gone that little step further to think, you know, what's this person's emotional response to exercise? Where did that emotional response come from? And how am I going to create this bridge appropriately, recognizing that they have a lot of negative thoughts and feelings around exercise, to bridge them into doing some sort of intentional movement that has a net neutral or net positive effect. So let me know what you think about this. This is something that like I kind of get into like new areas of research. I go down a lot of rabbit holes. And this was one that I was really thinking about, because even within ICE, right? Like we have to acknowledge we are obsessed with exercise, myself included. I love it. I crave it. I love the suck, but it's been something that I've been doing for a really long time. I don't have a lot of pain. I feel like I still have quite a bit of function. And I acknowledge that not everyone is going to share that love. And so if I'm saying everybody has to do high intensity and it's always going to be high intensity all the time, then I might actually be not helping some people that need it the most. You know, like we have this really active community that we can definitely help with our orthopedics, but so many of our older adults, they're not doing anything, right? Like they're not hitting anywhere near the exercise guidelines. And some of our research is showing that even doing a little bit, like 15 minutes of moderate intensity exercise on most days of the week is going to help stave off depression is going to cause a drop in all-cause mortality. And those are the people that I might not be preaching the high-intensity message to yet. Like, I might get there, but if they have a really negative response to exercise and I'm telling them to get into a really deep, dark pain cave, I'm not serving them well. All right, that's all I got for us today. If you have any other thoughts, feelings about this, let me know. This is a relatively new area of research. It's one that I have just recently discovered and I think is really cool. Hence why I'm sharing it on the podcast. If you are looking to get into our online classes, our level 2 course, if you have taken level 1, starts today. And if you are looking to get into level 1, we are doing a complete revamp of the material. I am very excited for how this has really shaped up. It starts on Monday. So get in. We got a couple of seats left. If you are looking to see us on the road, next week is our first MMOA Live of 2025. Dustin is going to be in Hendersonville, Tennessee. The next weekend, the 25th, 26th, I am going to be in Athol, Idaho. And then the week after, February 1st, 2nd, I'm going to be in Carson City, Nevada, just outside of Reno. So if you are looking to get into any of those courses, there's still a couple seats left in those. Let us know. We are super excited to be really going full force in the beginning of 2025. And I hope that that thought around effective exercise, the emotional responsive exercise, was something that you could doodle on. Have a great week, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the MMOA podcast. If you found this helpful, please share with someone that could benefit. And if you're looking for more practical content to help you better serve older adults, head over to www.mmoa.online, where you can learn more about our free resources, our community, continuing education courses, and our certification. Once again, that's www.mmoa.online. Thanks for listening.